Welcome back now to our next conversation. We'll see the average cost of preparing a pot of jollof rice for a Nigerian family of 5. That's risen by 9.73% over the past 7 months. And that's according to a new Jollof Index report by SBM Intelligence. Joining me now is Ikemesit Effiong, Head of Research, SBM Intelligence. Great to have you.
Absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so it's quite sad, because all of us, most of us love jollof rice, and now we're seeing the cost of preparing for a family of 5. That's gone up a lot in the past 7 years. I saw the previous report, and definitely this is almost bringing that saying. It'd be like say we no get food for poor man food no day again. Is that what we're seeing here?
Well, pretty much so. So you're seeing a lot of families. It's something that we've observed over the last 3 years at least, right, where a lot of families are cutting down on the frequency of meals. We did a study almost 2 years ago, and the majority of our respondents say they just have one major meal a day. Right, yeah, so this is just a continuation, right, of that outflow. You're also seeing a lot of substitution in terms of protein sources, right, and so for many people, chicken is only something that they see during the holiday period. It's not a regular staple, right, of their diet anymore. Fish is becoming a much more popular proposition, but even within the fish sub-segment, you're seeing people, right, play more with, some of the more cost-effective options, as it were. So whichever way, Nigerians are finding their way to get their jollof rice fix in, but just overall, in terms of how we weight the index and all of that, like you said, that amount is at a 7-year high now. It's crossed the 10,000 naira mark for the very first time with this.
Because I remember there was a time you could make a pot of jollof rice for about maybe 2,000 something.
Yes, indeed. In fact, when we started the index, I think it was a little under 4,000 now. So it was a real, projection just
Big
in
drive.
in one direction.
But looking at the data now, I want to know, I'm sure it's interesting how you guys pieced all of this data together. How'd you go about it?
Oh, yeah, sure. So we have enumerators. First, we surveyed 13 markets in Nigeria. The index for the first time expanded to Ghana. So with this index right now, we pulled the markets in Accra and Kumasi, right? And what we basically do is that we track the various prices for the various ingredients and condiments that go into making a pot of jollof rice. And we also track chicken too, right? Because, that's a popular. So that accounts for, a large share of the price increase, right? It's because, that chicken sub-segment, right, is quite volatile. So we track 30 markets across 9 cities right across the country. Right now, if you're in Abuja, it's a pretty horrid time, right, to make a pot of jollof. But if you're in Onitsha, it's more cost-effective than the rest of the country. Even though with Onitsha, it would still cost you about 8,000 plus naira. So it's, it's a dime a dozen, sort of difference, right, in terms of the price indicators. So we do that every month, and then we compile the index, right, every quarter, and we release. We typically don't do it for the 4th quarter of the year because of the seasonality effect, right, that holiday shopping, right, sort of distorts the number. So for the first 3 quarters of the year, we compute the index, and as you've seen for Q1, not a very
quite big, quite huge there. So obviously we've had that debate about, Ghana jollof, Nigerian jollof. So I'm wondering, which is more expensive?
It depends on the month, right? So in January and in March, Nigerian jollof was slightly more expensive than Ghanaian jollof. Ghanaian jollof was more expensive, right, in February. What we've actually noticed, and we only really started collecting data from Ghana from like the middle of last year. So there may be some statistical collection bias to this. But we think that there's, we think customers are more aggressive in terms of their substitution behavior, right? Because as you know, right, Ghana has been dealing with, fiscal macroeconomic challenges of late, and that is really filtering through in terms of, where the inflation price point is. It's quite high there in Ghana. It's not of 50%. And so customers are really, really feeling with a real sense of immediacy, right, these price increases. And so our initial observation is that Ghanaian customers are being more circumspect, and they're also being aggressive in sort of what those substitute food items are in terms of making their jollof, right? Nothing to say about the quality, just about the price.
Yeah, so whichever still wins. Maybe Nigeria.
Well, for the time being, we'll see how it goes. I'm sure we'll have a follow-up chat on this.
All right. So yesterday we celebrated, May Day, and we still have that whole minimum wage issue. Trying to, take it up, and looking at the cost, of making a pot of jollof rice for a family of 5, and we see that minimum wage, 30K. Quite a disparity there.
Yeah, quite a disparity. And the interesting thing to note about the minimum wage is that it's not just a flat, fixed, arbitrary price. So, inflation adjusted, the minimum wage right now is actually lower than when we adjusted it up to 30,000, right, on a purchasing parity basis. And so for many families, if you're just doing like a straight weighting cost, right, for a family of 5, a third of your income, if you're on minimum wage a month, will go towards preparing a pot of jollof, which is highly unsustainable. Of course, we also have data, and we've done a study which actually shows that 2/3 of average household spending in Nigeria, right, is channeled towards food, right. So this is already something that is a clear and present reality for a lot of Nigerian households, and I would not be surprised if you have stakeholders within the labor union segments that are calling for a push, right, in the minimum wage, because it's really not keeping pace with
2023. That's basically the year of strikes. We've seen strikes, globally. Everyone trying to get their wages up because of inflation. But what kind of economic policies can we look at to actually bring this cost, back down? Because we know when prices go up, sometimes it's really hard for it to come down.
Yeah, very much so. So about 6% of that 9.7% rise in the Jollof index was accounted for in September and October, and that was really the height of the fuel scarcity. So policies around consumption and transportation, so the things that facilitate the entire food ecosystem, right, the agricultural ecosystem, to get produce from the farm to the market, those will help. So infrastructure, things around how we manage our transportation mix, those would be a really big one. I mean, we've heard from people in the market where we survey that say, that's a huge thing for them. And there's also something to be said about us revisiting our currency management regime. I'm sure you've discussed this extensively with a rolling cast of analysts on this program. But we also noticed, especially around the time of the cash shortage, right, that we also saw, right, a bump in prices. And so doing things around that, you've got a plethora of FMCGs that are now releasing figures off of the top of my head, UAC, MTN, Notori, and all of these guys who have said that the cash shortage accounts for why they are seeing, that dwindling price points in terms of where their earnings profile is. And so doing things around those two things, well, I think those are sort of like two of the big low-hanging fruits. And then revisiting our export policy, right, in terms of, what we allow, market operators to be able to import, so that at least in the short term, there's that cushion effect on prices, right? I know that we're pursuing a self-sufficiency framework from a policy standpoint, but Nigerian households are paying in the short term, right, for that. And so doing something around that would also help, right, temper that, so that, you and I can hang out and have,
Well, I guess at the end of the day, hopefully the incoming government would put on their list, the first thing, bring down the price of cooking a pot of jollof.
Precisely.
I'm
down for that agenda.
We need our jollof rice. Thank you so much. That was Kemesit Effiong, Head of Research, SBM Intelligence. Great having your perspective.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, so after the break, we'll look at tax rises by the federal government as revenue drive intensifies. That's our next conversation. Stay with us.